we are going to have an amazing speaker next. He is an incredibly talented architect who currently lives in Bali, Indonesia. His name is Pablo Luna, and he was inspired and curious to learn about organic architecture. So he decided to relocate to Bali in 2016. And once there, he developed his knowledge of architecture using organic materials that grew through building, designing, and collaborating with some people while he was in Bali. In 2018, Pablo made his dreams a reality with the creation of Pablo Luna Studios. And Pablo Luna Studios focuses on design and development of architecture, jewellery, and the art with the use of bamboo and other natural materials. All his creations are founded in philosophies of sustainability, environmentalism, and biomimicry, which means just taking what comes from nature, with the intent to connect to the inhabitants with nature, others, and to help them reflect within themselves. His projects are constructed respectfully within locally sourced materials and have a low impact on the surrounding environment. Currently, his sustainable projects can be seen across the world in Southeast Asia, Costa Rica, Mexico, India, and Chile. His presentation is called The Influence of Architecture on Our Psyche. And thank you so much, Pablo. I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing your beautiful presentation.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kathy. Thank you for having me in this Business and Life Summit. I'm deeply honored to share about my experience within architecture and about my life, and particularly about this super interesting topic for me, that is the influence of architecture on our psyche. Understanding our psyche as our mind, as our soul, and as the relationship that we have with our inner world. I want to tell you more about this influence. I want to bring you on the journey of my life, and how I have seen this relationship spark at different moments, and how it has shaped the way I relate with my environment and with everybody around me. So my story begins in Chile. I was born in Santiago, and Chile is a place where I built the first frames, the first social construct within that allowed me to move and think and relate to others. Here I understood how our experience of reality is based on how we frame it. And for me, it was always reason for conversation. I always wanted to understand what made us move in certain ways, think in certain ways, be attracted to some friends or not others. So I started this journey, and for a visual experience, for a visual understanding, and my first sculpture was really a reflection of that moment in my life. And as you can see in these slides, it's basically frames that shows that are inspired on the idea of bringing awareness of our own mind frames. And it's just a visual representation of this. So basically, when you look in, you can see how some social ideas or personal ideas can close our mind and construct our movement. But at the same time, if we just shift, if we just look to the side, move, all these frames, we become aware of these frames. And we can move within them with a lot of flow and fluidity. And this topic has been a topic that until today has fascinated me. And that had lately brought me to New York. New York is a place where I study at Columbia University, and where I arrived with all these ideas and questions regarding of how we should live, how to live really a happy life, how to be in tune with my psyche, how to be in tune with my emotions. And it was here where I realized how to use the intellect, which is the mind, as a bridge between the instinct and the intuitive. Understanding the instinct as this innate hardwired tendency that we have as humans for survival and reproduction. And then the intuitive as this more as a gut feeling, something more related to the heart and the emotions. And so here it is where I continue trying to bring these frames ideas that I had back in Chile and explore it from a more intellectual level, but without losing this spiritual realm that I was always so present on my life. Here you can see how I continue with the frames and how we can find frames within frames. And how can we move? And there is movement in these frames because, again, frames are just the ideas that we use to move, relate, think, that most of the time we're not aware of. And I see frames as like habits or ways of thinking, and they're very positive. We all need them. We all, as architects especially, we need boundaries to create. In the case of architecture, it's about the land, the views, the movement of the sun. But it's bringing the awareness to these frames that can bring a lot of joy and peace and clarity. At the same time, in New York, I continue this journey and realize that we can have frames on top of frames and how they are constantly shifting, and they are not static. They are all the time in movement. And even though they continue with this sort of fragmentation, they allow room for creativity and for movement and for exploration. Just like as I said before, frames were positive. I loved them. I wanted them in my life. I just wanted to explore them and being aware and share them with others. However, at the end of my journey in New York, I was a little bit overwhelmed. It was too much of a mental discussion and me trying to find a visual language to which express these ideas that were constantly in my mind. And kind of as a conclusion, I came up with this idea of making a tornado. And a tornado is just a bunch of frames spiraling upwards, which create this sensation of chaos. And actually, a tornado represents a lot of worry and anxiety, and they are here to break the frames that we have. So it was a very beautiful experience to be able to create this. And as you see here, is these frames that create this sense of chaos, of misunderstanding, but at the same time of liberation. So the tornado felt super right to me as expression of my inner state back then in New York, now 10 years ago, because a tornado wants you to go higher, wants you to break boundaries, wants you to see new things. And at this stage, I was ready to go. I was ready to leave the city of New York and move forward for new adventures. This new adventure had will bring me to very unexpected places. In this case, to Bali. I arrived in Bali already 7 years ago. And Bali taught me so much. It reshaped what it means to me, mind frames, what it means to me to live in life. It reframes what it means spirituality, to understand myself, to understand the spirit world. And the big search that I see now looking back was how to understand the invisible questions within my life. And I will explain a little bit more of this further on the presentation. So here I am in Bali, and I find the day that I arrived a material that I fall in love with, bamboo. Bamboo is a very playful material. It's a material that grows abundantly, that breaks all frames, that grows in chaotic ways. And this material was the base for me to find my language, because I want to reinforce the idea that we need to find our language to be able to understand and be aware of the things that motivate us, construct us, and allow us to be like in our greater self. So bamboo in this case was a material that I was introduced with through John Hardy, and I arrived to a complete different dynamic, a complete different architecture, an architecture that is much more feminine. That is not about like in New York about having high skyscrapers where the office kind of has a certain power. If related to how it is in relation to others. But this is a more feminine architecture where you get to look each other, where shapes are oval, where shapes are circular, where it's about going higher together. And this understanding started to shape my views on what I wanted to do, how I wanted to express myself. And it was buildings like this that motivate me to understand frames not longer as square or like very constricted ideas, but really flexible, really playful frames that allow you to grow, that allow you to be yourself in the best of all ways. And this image is the one that shows my first architecture building, that it was a yoga shala, where you can see like now my frames are starting to become circular, are starting to have more movement, and are starting to kind of motivate and empower me to be more present. Why I say presence? Because to be in nature, you have to be aware. Every step, danger hats, as you can hear in the background now, nature is alive. Nature is forcing you to move, to be aware. So this was a very beautiful opportunity for me to create and be with people that are surrounding themselves with this flexibility. And I think the people that we are with really shape how we behave and how we can experience ourselves and inspire us to be the best version of who we want to be. So after a year and a half of working in a beautiful hotel called Bambu, I decided to start my own studio. And the studio really was born by this idea of promoting harmony between people and nature, life and spirituality. And this is more of a personal journey, of a personal aim of how to create architecture, how to represent visually these ideas that are invisible, like how we think, how we relate, and motivate and spark conversations of growth, conversations that bring creativity, that bring emotion, that allow us to open our hearts. Again, this is so much inspired by the Balinese culture, by how people relate here to each other in the Hindu religion. So this was the beginning of the journey. And the first building that I got to design was a treehouse. A treehouse is very playful. And it was my first commission building, and it was a real challenge because, as you saw before, I was coming from very square concepts. So I was asked here to bring all the creativity, to create a new language of frames, a new language of living. And here you can see some images of the result. A building that is flying, that invites you to look at nature, that invites you to look at yourself, an architecture of balance. I call it balance because today we live in such a fast-paced world where everything in the digital world moves so fast. We can change from kind of one world, meaning a website, to another in a matter of seconds. But in our physical world, things take longer. And I feel like we haven't adapted to the dynamism of our digital life in our physical life. So I wanted to create buildings that bring movement, that are kind of in the stage of what I feel we are today as a society, of a super flexible, fast-paced, dynamic, creative, yearning for love, for deeper connection. And I'm super grateful to have started this journey of beginning to understand what this language means to us, and particularly here in Bali, to me and my team. This treehouse was inspired on the movement of the bamboo, on the movement of the nature around it. I wanted the treehouse to disappear, to look like it was one of these insects that constantly are surrounding the building. And every little detail is inspired on this movement. And it's meant to make you feel love, to make you feel self, but also to spark that creativity. Because I realized that to understand our frames, we need to get out of ourselves. And that is a challenge today, to see ourselves from afar. And spaces like this bring certain reflection, inspire you, and allow you to look at yourself from another perspective, allow you to see the world from a more playful perspective. And this has been always a motivation behind everything we do, to come back, to connect to our hearts, and to be playful. Here is a bathroom experience. And then we started moving and said, okay, wow, here there is a language. We want to continue this exploration. So we have created something called the oyster villa, inspired on the mushrooms. And now, because we started slowly growing, that we were faced with different types of frames, like sustainability frames, meaning we wanted to look at our buildings from an economic, social, healthy perspective. And we had to bring all these boundaries into what we create and understand that, for example, a building like this works very well in an island like Bali, but could not be brought into Chile because of maintenance issues or the materiality and the culture available there. I'm not saying like our architecture fits all. We're very much context and culture oriented. So I will always felt inspired when I see different types of languages and when I see these different architects, designer, artists creating different ideas that relate to the environment where they are, because ultimately is this context and the possibilities, in my case here, having the bamboo and the craftsmanship and the beautiful talent that there is here in Bali to create shapes that sparked and that we were able to really inspire ourselves from a mushroom, like the oyster mushroom in this case, and create designs that brought this feeling and were very specific. In order to create this, and this is more to tell you a little bit about my story, we at the studio have practiced model making. Model making are bamboo models that are scale 1 to 50, in which we use bamboo and we use to test our structures and create shapes that relate to the nature that's around us. We are all about biomimesis, and that's been a very important frame for us. Like, we really want to understand the frames of nature and bring that into our architecture and share that with everybody that wants to go like in this journey with us. And ultimately, model making was this language for me. As an architect, I wanted to find a way where I could visually express to my clients and tactically, like, really get to touch it what we were trying to create together. In this case, this is a Minang bridge. This is inspired on the beautiful island of Sumba, and you can see the frames of the bridge now that are triangular, but are creating this structure and are creating movement. So here is where all kind of tied together, where you can see how frames can spark movement, can expand shape, can create this symbiosis between us and nature. For me, this is one of the most special projects I have created, and because it really represents like a conclusion, like a moment where I could rest and where I could see all these ideas, all the exploration starting to take shape and starting to merge, how nature and us are so connected and ultimately are one. And then I realized it's all about practice. So at the studio, we really have dive deep into the model making experience, because repetition, as frames are, repetitive patterns, is what brings mastery. And there is such beauty in repetition. Like, for example, we cannot live in gratefulness if we are not constantly practicing gratitude. So this understanding brought us in a very big journey the last couple of years of trying to create models, understand this, how to create shape, how to see the frames of nature. And we are still in that journey. We are diving deep into it, bringing, as I was saying before, the sustainability frames with nature shapes, ultimately to create what we really aim, that is this harmony of architecture, an architecture of harmony, an architecture of life, an architecture that brings joy, an architecture that brings you into yourself by kind of bringing you out. I always give the example of gazing into nature, and ultimately by through this gazing, losing yourself to coming back to yourself. Is when you are lost by the beauty that surrounds us, that you're able to look in, and you're able to ask the sometimes hard questions, or the beautiful questions that you need to listen, or have those conversations with your friends that you were longing to have for a long time. And this is a little bit where we are today, still in this journey of trying to create an architecture of the spirit. This is a building that it's going to be built very soon in Mexico, and kind of brings a lot of ideas together. For me, it was a journey when we designed this, of creating of the awareness of self, a building that allows meditation, that also kind of challenge a little bit, like, of the world of architecture in general, the shapes that we're used to, the frames that you are used to. We want to create something like, so we start to see and to feel that we can live differently, that we are so different, that we all not need to live in square boxes, even though they're so beautiful and everybody that feels inspired can live there. But it's kind of, this is going to be in Mexico, and we want to start to bring certain aliveness that wasn't maybe that, yeah, kind of present before. And finally, it's all about, for us, and about an architecture of questions. It's like, what is the architect role today? What is the responsibility between to the greatest public sphere? And how to create a feeling of amazingness without losing functionality, because it's also not about creating frames that actually will disorient us or make us feel like they are so expanded that we don't feel safe or secure. We don't can look and comfort ourselves. So it's how to keep a sense of wonder without leaving aside practicality when relating with the space that surrounds us. That's kind of the journey where we are today, and that's the challenge. These are some of other buildings that we have created, where it's really an interplay of so many frames, of so many ideas, of nature, of us, of the materiality. So ultimately, as you can see, it's all about these patterns, it's all about these ideas, and how to take these ideas for how to look at these ideas with love, respect, because we are who we are at the given moment, and we need to appreciate and be grateful for that. And love is just the awareness of the gift that life is. And I really feel honored today to be able to share a little bit of my journey with you, of what we have created, of the ideas that we are working that are very much in progress, and we are like really trying to decode and keep understanding and go back to those frames where I was in Chile to keep looking at them, because it's once you kind of look at one frame, you realize that that frame was within a bigger frame. And it's a constant journey. It's a constant journey of growth, of gratitude, of experience. And this is a little bit what we've been practicing at the studio. I hope I can see everybody in Bali at some point. I hope you have a beautiful summit. An honor to share a little bit of my life, a little bit of my work. And see you soon. Thank you, Kathy, again. Bye.
Thank you so much, Pablo. I am so inspired. I don't know about you guys, but when I can travel to Bali, I'm going to be on a plane to have a look at Pablo's amazing creations. It is incredible that our psyche is so intertwined with where we live and the architecture. And I love that the architecture is looking at our well-being as well in the structures. So thank you so much, Pablo.